All right, so this is a deep one.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, you think that it can go the other way too?
I'm sorry. What do you
Energetically, instead of being electron, more proton. In other words, here's my reason for asking that question. Um, there are a lot of bacterium, archaea too, that can live in very, very hostile environments
Yeah.
with these poisons. Like I've actually harvested grasses that have been exposed to 60 plus years of being exposed to these horrific herbicides. And I extracted the soil and the soil bio, and I separated out the soil biology and then applied it to an area that had been devastated by Roundup. And what I noticed was that within a matter of weeks, I treated the soil, gently watered it for a couple weeks. Then I overseeded it, put some hay on it, and then put a biological inoculant on it, and it took off. So why I'm asking that is I wonder if, this Roundup or glyphosate, whatever you want to call it, that is killing a lot of the diversity that I see. Is there another one that actually can convert it and use it as an energy source? Because that's what it appears that it did. So wouldn't that kind of lead to, well, if glyphosate kills the easy water in certain bacteria, but it doesn't in others, that bacteria may actually be the opposite of easy water?
I can't answer that because I don't know enough. But generally in science, there's a principle of simplicity, and simplicity would, if the principle applies, is called Occam's razor, after Sir William of Occam, I think the 12th century or something like that. Simplicity is the essence of science, and so you'd expect that if glyphosate worked in one way in one plant, you wouldn't expect it to work the opposite way in another plant. I guess I could speculate that the competition is killed off. Maybe some other species are more sensitive to glyphosate than the ones you're talking about. So, with the competition for nutrients killed off, maybe the species in question can flourish. I mean, that would be one possible interpretation. I don't know enough details to comment beyond that, but I would be surprised if glyphosate is so broadly speaking a poison. I wouldn't expect it to do the opposite in one particular species. But that's just my speculation. I really don't know anything about the particular circumstance or the subject, so I shouldn't speculate beyond what I know, a small amount.
Well, I'll be honest. A lot of the work I've done was speculative, and then came up with interesting results. And the only reason I wanted to ask that, and I hope I asked it correctly, because I was talking about the bacterium that were, because I did an extraction of the soil biology to treat the soil that had been damaged. So that's what I was thinking. Like, and generally speaking, there has to be a yin and yang in life as well. So theoretically, there would possibly be another opposite, proton charged organism. But again, this is way out in left field. So
well, I can't. I'm not sure. I mean, you could be absolutely right, but I really don't have a lot to add. There's one that's sort of related, but not. We owe Benjamin Franklin um, uh, uh, the honor of having labeled the electron negative and the proton positive. And at least for humans, and I think for plants too, negative charge is really important. The more negative charge we have, the healthier we are, and the more positive charge we're subjected to, the less healthy we are. And there are a lot of evidence all over the scientific map to support that. So it turns out, negativity has a positive effect. If Benjamin Franklin had reversed the nomenclature and said that let's call electrons positive and protons negative, then we could say a positive charge has a positive effect. It would be a lot easier and more sensible instead of the opposite. But I guess we, if we pay homage to Benjamin Franklin for his important discoveries and such, we can't really challenge him on that.
No, it's a little late for that, I would say.
Yeah, that is true.
Another really interesting thing about the heart. So we all know you can't compress water, and the cell is what percent water. So when the energy, the positive charges around the artery or the capillary are helping to push that platelet through, is it twisting because you can't compress it, or is it just elongating to get it through that tighter space?
Well, the pictures that you see, I mean, this is direct evidence. You can see it on videos. The red blood cell, which is really what we're talking about mostly, red blood cell has the shape of a kind of donut. Although it's not a complete hole in the middle, it's a donut with some filling in the middle, and it looks as though you're taking this planar donut and bending it this way. So you can imagine, if you have a flexible donut and try to push it through a vessel of some sort, that's the way you'd expect it to bend. And it's a fair amount of energy that is required to do that. And also the other issue is that there must be some reason for it. Nature, yeah, there you go. So they're red blood cells, and they actually will bend around. If you take a midline and draw a line between the two halves of the cell, they'll bend around that line. It's what the videos show. I don't know how much energy is required, but you can imagine it's a fairly substantial amount. And doing calculation, of course, all calculations require assumptions, so you can never be sure. But I was totally shocked when these guys were telling me it's about 1 million times the pressure that if a ventricle were responsible, it'd have to generate 1 million times the pressure that it actually generates. It's a lot of energy. So if you think along those lines, if their calculation is even near being correct, even if it's off by a couple of orders of magnitude, it's still a huge amount of force, of energy that's required, which implies that the ventricle may be responsible for only a very modest amount of the energy that's needed. The rest coming from the cells themselves. From the vessels themselves. So it could be very substantial. I'm sorry, I deviated from your question.
No. That was my whole point, was that the amount of energy that's in the body is clearly, as you said, the heart would have to beat 1 million times harder to or create more pressure.
Yeah,
that's got to be pretty damn significant.
That's very significant. Yeah,
right. And so I recently saw a paper talking about millivolts of a cell, and they said, if you add up all the trillions of cells in our body and you put them together, then in many ways the human, and I'm sure animals too, are in many ways generators of electricity.
Exactly. Yeah. So, we're electrical generators. We run on electricity. The biochemistry books and cell biology books presents us as chemical beings. More and more, it's pretty clear that we're electrical beings. So let me step back. So was it 70 or 80 years ago? The idea of ATP was discovered, and the idea was that adenosine triphosphate, one of the phosphate bonds of the three of them, is a high energy bond. And that bond, that high energy bond, is used to confer energy to whatever the body does. That's the ultimate source of energy. Well, a year later or 2 years later, someone challenged that point of view. And I hadn't known about it, but Gilbert Ling on his website, gilbertling.org, it still exists, tells the story of that. So another group said, the first group who said there's a high energy bond, they made a simple arithmetic error. They screwed up. They're wrong. It's not true. Well, since then, so you have a hypothesis, and then you've got another group that says you're all wet. You're wrong. There is no such thing. And nobody has ever followed up on that. So in truth, we really don't know who's right. Is it the original perpetrators of this idea, or is it the challengers who said there's nothing to it? We don't know. And that demands further exploration, because
that is absolutely mind-blowing.
It's mind-blowing. Yeah, it might be all wrong, completely wrong. I don't know if it's wrong or right, because the experiment, or it needs to be addressed by somebody.